Kenzo, we had a studio in Soho Street. I did hairdressing pictures. The hairdressers sent pictures out as handouts to be used in magazines. So I'd take the hair picture, we'd do prints, and it would be sent to Woman's Own, Woman's Weekly, etc., etc. I started to go to Paris, 63 I think it was, with my wife. At that time you didn't cover the shows, you went after the shows had happened to the salon and they would have selected say 5 garments or 6 garments that they allowed the press to photograph. We had to pay the models. This was one of the things that restricted us a bit. Didn't mean to say we would use all 5 garments which were free, because we had to have a budget and go from house to house and pay the equivalent of £4 in francs. The ready-to-wear let us in to photograph their shows, and many more photographers did it and many more papers used it. The couture designers suddenly thought they were going to be losing out to the ready-to-wear, and they then, after one season, the next season, they got in on the act as well, and they started to let us in to photograph their shows. Kenzo, Spring-Summer 73. It was called Jap, and they were exciting moments again. We were by the side of the catwalk, but I noticed when you look, there aren't that many photographers, not as many as there are later on. The models danced and were full of life. Saint Laurent, 1974. It was a couture show in the Rue Spontini. It was very, very intimate. Mostly ladies in the front row, a few gentlemen in the second row. They were journalists, except that some of them would have been clients who buy the clothes, actually. No celebrities at that time, as such. Milan suddenly came on the scene, but I did have problems with Armani. They wouldn't let me in to the very early ones, because they thought I was a spy. They then welcomed me in with open arms. So Pat Cleveland, being Madonna, or a Madonna I suppose you would say, in a spectacular Mugler show. We weren't confined to a normal catwalk. It was a rather big stage and we were just allowed to roam at the front of the stage. She had a presence and a sort of look. We were all at the side of the runway rather than at the back, and we used to sit on boxes and rise up to take the photograph. Journalists got totally sick of not being able to see anything because we kept rising up in front of them, and they were not amused. And so gradually we got shepherded off the side of the runway, and Versace had booked these supermodels. They weren't the supermodels then, they became the supermodels, and very good for the catwalk. It did change the scene completely, because then every newspaper in England would come to cover a show, because they would get pictures in there, they'd have something to show their readers. John Galliano, this was the show that he actually made us wait 3 hours before it started. But I have to say, it was worth it. He really, really was a showman I mean, just look at the trousers. They were all ripped and holes, and he's wearing an Elvis Presley t-shirt. He would come as a different persona in all the shows. I rather miss that because he doesn't come out anymore. I first met Lee when I'd shoot him in his studio at work, and he was actually pinning a dress to a model. So he asked me to do his collections. They were such wonderful shows that you couldn't help but get wonderful pictures. This was a glass box which was in the middle of the show space. And when the show had finished, the glass box suddenly exploded, broke open and released a lot of moths. And there was a lady inside on a chaise with air being pumped. He had a great imagination, and McQueen was great at producing pictures. I'm going to confess something. The very first Vetements show I didn't go to because I'd never heard of it. And nobody actually told me to go to it, but I have covered it since. This one was in a Galerie Lafayette. It had a sort of atmosphere. I rather liked it. The atmosphere was one of, curiosity and interest, because they don't sort of do ordinary things, except they are ordinary things. They do ordinary things in a very extraordinary way. I still like it. I still enjoy it. I still wait for that moment when the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up.